What if the most important thing depends on you? Rachel, standing on the edge of life and death, met Jesus and asked him the question that so many of us wonder about: when will you return? His answer shook her to the core and changed everything. This story will make you reflect on your life and your future. Stay with us to uncover the truth he revealed to her. Rachel was a 38-year-old woman with a big heart and a deep sense of responsibility for everyone around her. Her life might have seemed ordinary, but it was filled with care for others, small sacrifices, and a profound sense of purpose that she didn't always recognize. She worked as an elementary school teacher. For Rachel, it wasn't just a job, it was a calling. She always knew she wanted to work with children. They were open, honest, and in need of love and support. Sometimes, she felt like she wasn't just teaching them but helping them believe in themselves. Every morning, Rachel arrived at her classroom early to prepare for the day. Her desk was always decorated with little drawings and notes from her students. "Thank you, Miss Rachel. You're the best." One day, she noticed that one of her students, Tommy, was always sitting quietly in the corner. She approached him and said, "Tommy, do you know that you're special? You're strong and smart, and I'm proud of you." The boy started to cry. Later, Rachel learned he was having problems at home, and her words became his first ray of hope in a long time. After work, Rachel always hurried home to her two children, Emma and Jacob. Emma, her oldest, loved drawing nature and dreamed of becoming an artist. She often showed her mom her drawings, and Rachel always encouraged her, "This is beautiful, sweetheart. You see the world in such a special way, and that's a gift." Jacob, her younger child, was full of energy and loved adventures. He often ran out to the yard to collect treasures, leaves, rocks, and even small bugs. Rachel always made time to listen to his stories about how he rescued an ant in distress. Her husband, Tom, was her rock. He worked as a mechanic, and his hands always smelled of motor oil, but in his arms, she found comfort and support. "I don't know how you do it, Rachel," he once told her. "You're like an angel for everyone around you." Besides caring for her family, Rachel looked after her elderly mother, who lived alone. Her mom had always been a strong woman, but age and illness had made her dependent on Rachel's help. Every Saturday, Rachel visited her mother with a basket of groceries, helped her clean the house, and simply sat by her side, listening to stories from the past. She often repeated the same stories, Rachel recalled, but I knew it was important to her. It was her connection to the people she loved and lost. Despite her constant responsibilities, Rachel found solace in nature. The forest was her refuge. "When I walked along the trail, surrounded by trees, I felt as though God was embracing me through the world around me," she said. "It was my time to talk to him, ask for strength, and thank him for everything I had." Rachel's friends often spoke about her kindness. One of her close friends, Sarah, remembered, "If you're struggling or feeling down, Rachel will always find time for you. She doesn't just listen, she understands. Sometimes, I think she gives more than she gets." But Rachel often felt exhausted. "I always asked myself, am I doing enough? Does what I do really matter?" she admitted. Her days were filled with small acts of kindness that she didn't see as significant. But for the people around her, her kindness was a beacon of light in their lives. One quiet and warm autumn day, Rachel went to the forest after finishing her morning chores. The kids were at school, her husband was at work, and she had a rare moment to herself. She took a bottle of water, a small backpack, and headed out on her favorite trail, hoping to find peace. The forest was her sanctuary. The tall pines stretched toward the sky like giant columns holding up heaven. The leaves crunched beneath her feet, and the air was filled with the fresh scent of pine. She walked along the trail, listening to the sounds of the forest. The singing birds and rustling wind reminded her of how beautiful the world is. Inside, she prayed, asking God for strength and thanking Him for her family, her children, and her life. It was her moment of unity with him. The trail led her to her favorite clearing, a spot with a breathtaking view of the forest and distant mountains. The sun was setting, painting everything around her in soft golden and orange hues. She stopped to take in the moment. She gazed at the horizon, feeling the tension melt away. She thought, if this isn't proof of God's love, then what is? But suddenly, something changed. The world around her seemed to freeze. The birds stopped singing. The wind stilled. Even the leaves that had been swirling on the ground seemed to pause mid-air. Rachel felt a strange heaviness in the air, as if everything had become unnaturally dense. She looked around, trying to understand what was happening. It felt like the beginning of a storm, but the sky remained clear, without a single cloud. Inside, she felt a sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. Her body began to weaken. She tried to take a step, but her legs felt rooted to the ground. Her knees buckled, and in the next moment, she collapsed to the earth. When Rachel fell, she expected to feel the cold ground beneath her, but instead, she felt warmth enveloping her from all sides. Everything around her disappeared, the trees, the sky, the grass. She was no longer in the forest. A brilliant light appeared before her. It wasn't just light, like sunlight or a lamp. It was something alive, breathing. The light was everywhere, around her, inside her, in every cell of her being. She felt it fill her with warmth, love, and peace unlike anything she had ever known. But the strangest thing was that Rachel didn't feel any fear. Not at all. In that moment, she realized she was in the hands of something greater. She lay in the light, and it felt as if time had stopped. She felt no pain, no fear, no questions, only peace and a deep sense of safety. It was as though someone was holding her, someone kind, loving, and deeply caring for her. She remembered thinking, is this the end? Am I dead? But instead of terror, she felt she was exactly where she was supposed to be. This light wasn't just surrounding her, it was like a conversation without words. It felt as though the light itself was saying, I'm here. Everything will be okay. You're safe. It was the deepest sense of love she had ever experienced. Rachel didn't know how much time had passed. She couldn't tell if she was in her body or not. Her body no longer hurt, she felt light, as though she were part of the light itself. But at the same time, she knew this wasn't a dream. It was more real than anything she had ever known. Every thought, every emotion, was crystal clear. She heard a faint, distant sound. It was her heartbeat, but it seemed far away, as though she were listening to it from another realm. Rachel felt her soul was in a place where time didn't exist, where there were no boundaries or pain. It was something she could never have imagined, yet it felt more familiar and more like home than anywhere she had ever been. She knew this wasn't a coincidence. Something extraordinary was happening. This was an invitation, a beginning of a journey that would change her forever. As she remained in the light, everything she had ever understood about reality seemed to dissolve. This was beyond comprehension, a realm where time and space had no meaning. The light was dazzlingly bright, yet it didn't hurt her eyes. It wasn't just around her, it was alive and pulsating. And in this light, she felt a presence. At first, she didn't see him, but she knew he was there. The feeling was so strong that she had no doubt, this was Jesus. Rachel remembered the moment he appeared before her. His figure wasn't ordinary, but she could see him clearly. He was radiant, filled with light, yet he wasn't abstract or shapeless. He looked like a man, but his presence went beyond anything human. His eyes. She would never forget his eyes. They held the whole world, every moment of joy, every sorrow, every prayer. But above all, they radiated love, boundless, forgiving, and eternal. His face emanated kindness and peace. It felt familiar, as if she had known him her entire life, yet it was also new, deeper than anything she could comprehend. His hair was soft and dark, slightly wavy, cascading to his shoulders. His face was framed by a short, neatly trimmed beard. His skin had a warm tone, almost glowing from within. But what struck her most were his hands. His hands were strong and firm, yet they felt gentle, like those of someone used to holding and healing, not hurting. She noticed the marks on his palms. They emitted light, as though each scar told a story of his love and sacrifice. He wore simple clothing, a long white robe that seemed to glow faintly. But it wasn't his clothing that made him extraordinary, it was his very presence. Standing near him, she felt not only safe but completely loved, as if nothing and no one could ever harm her. When Rachel finally found the strength to speak, tears streamed down her face. She asked, "Why am I here? Why did you let me see you?" He smiled, a smile that felt like the sunrise, like the promise of a new day. And he said, "You are here because I love you. You think your life is just daily responsibilities, but you don't see how important your actions are. Every act of kindness is a step of light in a world often filled with darkness." She felt warmth flood her heart, and she gathered all her courage to ask the most important question, "Jesus, when will you return? The world needs you so much." His gaze deepened, and in his eyes, she saw not only love but also sadness. He replied, "My return has already begun. It will not happen as a sudden event that everyone is waiting for. My return begins in every heart that opens itself to love, mercy, and light. I will not come as a king to rule over the world. I will come when humanity is ready to accept me not as an external force but as a truth that lives within each of you. Every kind act, every prayer, every sacrifice for another, it all brings my presence closer to the world. You are my hands, my eyes, my light on this earth." These words pierced deep into Rachel's soul. She realized his return wasn't about waiting, it was a process that was already happening, and she was part of it. As Jesus stepped closer, Rachel felt his hand gently touch her head. The gesture was so soft, so warm, that she felt as though every part of her being was made whole again. He spoke to her with a voice that was like music, like the gentle flow of a river carrying away all her fears. "Your time has not yet come," he said. "You have a mission. You must return and tell others what you have seen. You are a light to those around you. Continue to live, to love, to care. And know that I'm always with you." Rachel felt as though a new purpose was being breathed into her soul. When she looked back at him one last time, the light around him grew brighter. Slowly, he began to fade, but his presence remained with her. Even as the vision dimmed, she knew, he was still there, always near, always watching. Suddenly, she became aware of her surroundings again. A rush of sensations filled her, cold air, the rustling of leaves, the hard ground beneath her body. It was strange and disorienting, as though her soul had been gently lowered back into her physical form. The first sound she heard was the faint crunching of leaves and twigs. Footsteps. Then voices. "Did you hear that? Over there," a man's voice called out, full of urgency. "Oh my God, she's here. Hurry," a woman's voice followed, trembling with concern. Rachel felt shadows fall over her, and she heard the sound of a backpack hitting the ground as someone knelt beside her. "Can you hear us? Are you okay?" the man asked, his voice deep but comforting. Rachel tried to speak, but her voice was barely a whisper. The only word she could manage was, "Help." The woman leaned closer, placing a hand gently on Rachel's forehead. Her touch was warm and reassuring. "She's alive," the woman said, relief flooding her voice. "But she needs help right away." The man quickly took off his jacket and draped it over Rachel to protect her from the cold. The woman pulled out a bottle of water, soaked a cloth, and dabbed it on Rachel's forehead. "Call 911, the woman urged, her voice steady but full of worry. The man pulled out his phone, dialing with shaking hands. "We're here," he said softly to Rachel. "Just hold on. You're not alone." Rachel opened her eyes briefly, her vision blurry. She could barely make out their faces, but she felt their presence, steady, kind, and full of determination. "You're strong," the woman said, holding Rachel's hand. "You're going to make it. We're with you." Those words felt like a lifeline. Rachel didn't know who these people were, but their care and compassion anchored her in that moment. The sound of sirens grew louder as the paramedics arrived. Rachel felt hands checking her pulse and heard calm, efficient voices discussing her condition. "She's dehydrated and weak, but she's stable enough to transport," one paramedic said. The man and woman didn't leave her side until the paramedics assured them she was in good hands. "We found her just in time," the man explained to one of the medics. "It's like we were meant to be here." Rachel wanted to thank them, but her voice was too faint. She managed a small smile, and they seemed to understand. As the ambulance doors closed, Rachel caught one last glimpse of them, standing together, relieved and smiling. Though she didn't know their names, their faces were etched into her memory forever. Rachel woke up to the sight of her husband Tom and her children, Emma and Jacob, sitting by her bedside. Their faces were tear-streaked, but their eyes shone with gratitude. "You're back," Tom said, gripping her hand tightly. "We thought we lost you." Rachel's heart ached with love for them. She remembered the light, the presence of Jesus, and the strangers who had saved her. She knew none of it was an accident. "I came back for you," she whispered. "I have so much to tell you." Rachel's experience left her forever changed. She no longer saw her life as ordinary. Every little act of kindness, every moment of love, took on new meaning. She remembered Jesus' words, "You are my hands, my eyes, my light on this earth." Those words became her guide. Rachel shared her story with her family, her friends, and anyone willing to listen. She didn't preach or try to change people's minds, she simply told the truth about what she had seen, felt, and heard. Her days were no longer filled with doubt about whether her actions mattered. She knew they did. Every smile, every helping hand, every kind word, it all carried the light of His love into the world. Rachel's story isn't just her own, it's a reminder for all of us. Every act of love, no matter how small, is a step toward the light. So, what will you do today to be part of that light? What will be your next step toward kindness, toward love, toward the light? Remember, each of us can be a bridge for someone else. Write your thoughts in the comments, share this video, and inspire someone to become part of this great purpose. You matter. Your life matters. And the light you carry has the power to change the world. If this story touched your heart, give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Don't miss out on more stories that inspire and uplift. Your likes and comments help spread light and love in this world.